Okay, so here's my base. It's 19 inches. This is just pine. I'm going to use this 1¼ inch runner so I can lock it into the vise. So that'll be on the bottom. This piece here will be the guide, and it's going to have grooves cut in it for some wedges. The wedges will be from this glued together to make them thicker. And we'll run the plane, which for me will be this number 4 Stanley, up the side here. So I think I have enough room. I did consider cutting this smaller, and I actually may cut about 1.5 inches off this. This is about 6.5 inches, and really want it to be about 5. So let's trim this board to length. I'll rip it, and we'll get together with the build. Okay, so I'm going to glue up these 2 pieces. That'll give me about 1.25 inches to make wedges out of. And then I'm just going to cut on a diagonal. I'll make them the same. They don't need to be the same. But let's glue this up. Okay, I'm going to use lots of glue here because we want this to be one solid piece. We'll just put this in the vise and throw a couple clamps on it as well. Okay, so I'm just going to take my number 4 plane, which needs a bit of a sharpening, but I'm just going to clean up this sawed edge of this board. Because both edges of its baseboard are square and true. So just take the block plane and try to clean up the end grain on these smaller pieces. Okay, so I lied about only using hand tools. I'm going to use a electric drill right now. I'm just thinking how far in I want this. I want it about that far in. That way it overlaps the top of the vise. And now let's just move it back and put it there. So dab of glue and we'll screw it down. Okay, and there's why we pre-drill holes. Okay, so let's pre-drill the pine. I could probably rescue that with a bit of glue. Yeah, I'm not going to make a new one. I'm just going to glue this piece on. Just like that. We'll drill this one down. I'll add a clamp to hold that one in place. Okay, so it's dried overnight. Let's remove the clamps. My glue up's I think okay on the other side, but obviously the board is not exactly the same, so I'm going to plane this down. And then we'll get to work making some wedges out of this. Okay, so we'll take a saw and we'll just even up both ends. Again, a hand saw, since I'm doing this. My number 4 plane, the frog is too far forward, so the mouth isn't opened up enough and it gets jammed up. The blade probably needs a bit of a sharpen, and obviously I need to clean this up. Didn't do a great job when I restored it. So I'm going to sand the sides and bottom of the plane, resharpen it, move the frog back, and that's why I was using the block plane, which works perfectly. Okay, so this is just over 4 inches wide. I'm just going to mark 1.5 inches in on both sides, and then I'm going to join up the line. And this will give us our 2 wedges. Okay, so they're not identical, and that's okay because they're going to go in 2 different slots. I'll mark 190, 145. We will clean out the top with the hand plane, and we'll also get rid of these edges after we fit them in place on the board. Okay, so there are the wedges cut, and next we will mark them on our insert board onto the shooting board. We'll cut the wedges so they fit into place, trim them in place, and the shooting board is done. So still a couple steps to go, but not long now. Okay, so we got our board. This is the face we're going to use, that's square. So we probably want to go about 4 inches down and place a mark. This will be our 90-degree mark. So we will transfer the 90-degree lines about there. Nice and light at first, and then you can go heavy. So there we have a line, and we use this to make a knife wall with the saw. And we're going to use this. Just put that in there, and we'll mark just approximately where this is going to be. And we'll mark this as our 90. So we'll use this as the 45. We're going to use this edge on the 45, that edge on the 45, the straight one, which is actually this edge here. So we will flip this around, mark 45. First of all, nice and gentle. And we'll take our 45. Put it approximately in place and use a pencil line to mark the other one. And we're going to have an overlap. Approximately like that. So let's mark our .45 there. So that line looks good. And we will mark our approximate. So if it's like this, line's going to be like that. So we need our 45 coming the opposite way. So just the approximate position. All right, and these lines don't need to be exact. The pencil, because we're going to mark it with a knife wall. So first off, let's saw the knife walls on our for sure lines, and we'll move forward from there. So here's our knife wall. We will saw exactly on the line. But actually, before we do that, let's mark down about a 1/4 inch or a third of the way down this board with a marking gauge. Okay, let's transfer these lines. And we'll use our marking gauge to just mark them out. Okay, so keeping this in the vise, again, bevel up and chisel. We're just going to cut in to our saw wall. Not all the way down. Because this is pine, it's fairly easy. Well, you may want to use a hammer. Okay, so from here, we'll take our 90 and place it in about its location. It's all right if it sticks out a bit. We will cut it off. And from here, carefully, so you don't cut yourself, we'll mark the knife hole on the other side. Remember to go light at first, then you can go heavier. Okay, so we see there it's in from our line, and that's okay. The line's just a representation to give us an idea. Again here. We will put the knife wall in. I'll just use the tip on the edge here. Push it into place against the knife wall. Make it steady. Oops, and mark the other side, which I've had a bit of a slip of the blade. So hand tool is much more safer than power tools, but not completely safe. So just remember, keep your fingers out of the way of sharp blades. Okay, so the inside line is what we want there. Okay, so same thing. And take your chisel, just come into the knife wall. Just lightly by hand, bevel up. And this will give us a place to rest the saw, to saw the knife wall down. So I need to be a bit careful here because I've scribed a couple lines. The inside line is the line I actually want. So not too much pressure. Just cutting in to that scrap line all the way around, and same on this side. Just to the inside. Okay, so from here we can remove the majority of the waste. So I'm going to cut in and let it flick out, not go straight to the knife wall. I can still go bevel up, or I can go bevel down. At this point it doesn't really matter. Just removing the majority of the waste, and we'll flick it off. We can clean up after when we get close to our marked line. Okay, so from here, but staying above the line, we can use a stabbing motion, but aiming up to the sky. So bevel up. And this allows us to work down to that line, which is pretty low. So we got a fair amount to go. Okay, so we're pretty close there. I'll flip that over and do the other side and carry on. Then we will use our homemade router plane to finish this. So if you're consistent, you can use a chisel just like this to clean this up, and it'll be fine. We're going to use the manual, i.e. non-electric, router plane. Mostly because we built it and have an opportunity to make it work. I may have gone a bit deep on this side, and we'll clean it up with the router plane. It will take that out. I'll just do a bit more cleanup, and we'll break out our newest tool. Okay, so we got our router plane. I'm going to set it up here. And what we're going to do is not set this all the way to the line, but a little bit above the line we want at first, and we'll give this a go. Okay, so the shooting board is complete. Remember, it's just a tool, so it doesn't have to be awesome. So this seems pretty far out, but if we tap it in, it should be fine. These fibers will compress because this is pine. All right, well, I might just have to plane a bit off my 90. My 45 is looking good. Yep, protrudes past the end, so we'll just mark and cut that off later. Same thing for the 90. That's what I would like to do. The 90, I'm going to take it off of the non-true edge with the plane. Okay, and now the 90 fits just fine. So both in there firm. What's left to do, and obviously glue this board to its base. Then we'll cut off these ends, plane it, and give it a go. See how accurate we were. Okay, you could screw this in, but I'm just going to use some glue, clamp it up. That'll be fine. And that way, if I ever have to cut into it, or for whatever reason to re-square the wedges, I won't have to worry about any screws getting in the way. So we'll just line this up a little bit over on each side, and we'll plane it down so it looks nice in the end. Okay, so that's good. We'll stick that in the vise, add a few clamps, and let that lay up. Okay, so the glue's had time to set up. We'll just remove our clamps. And the board is basically ready to use, although, as you'll see, I glued this on the wrong side. So we'll remove that and we'll put it on the other side. That doesn't matter for now. What we need to do to finish it, trim off these two pegs, and then we'll run the plane through, which will create a small chamfer here. While we're doing that, we might blow out the ends of this. That's all right. Once they chip out a bit, they'll stop. And one way to make that a little bit better is just saw off the end after the chip out occurs. So let's remove these pegs, trim them up, and we'll get on to finishing our shooting board. Okay, so marking on here, I basically have scribed a line straight up the side and where it meets here. And then with a steel ruler and my marking knife, I marked the line for 45. And we'll cut that out. As before, we'll just give ourselves a good knife wall. So we can cut this with the saw. Let's clean up the edge of the knife wall. This doesn't have to be exact because it will clean up with the plane. Okay, and there'll be no good way to cut this, so I'm going to cut it here. And then cutting just outside of my lines. Again, we'll clean this up with the plane. Okay, so we'll take our plane, we'll slide it along. First we'll remove both of our stops, and we'll get the plane set into the board by sliding it. This will make a small chamfer in here. So basically, the plane will register on the bit where there's no blade. So take some passes. You may have to adjust your plane at first. As long as your knife and your plane body are at 90 degrees. I have to back the plane out slightly to get this to start, and then slowly work up to the normal amount of planing that I would do. We'll advance the blade slightly. And slightly again. Okay, we've created a micro chamfer in here. And at some point, the plane will stop when the plane is fully registered against this edge. At that point, it won't cut anymore. Okay, so there the plane is fully registered. And you can see here the knife wall, or not the knife wall, but the chamfer in between the plane body and the plane blade. Okay, so let's take our 45. And it is sticking out a fair amount, so let's true this up with our plane. And we'll just do the final chamfering here. And that's it. We're finished. So what I will do is I'll clean up the ends and the sides of the board with the same plane, and then it doesn't need to be finished, although I can try to prevent it from getting damp by giving it some sort of coating. You could use wipe on poly, a lot of people use. I'm going to use linseed oil and then just wax the board. As you can see, it's going to get dirty from the plane. It's going to get chewed up over time. So, you know, it's a tool. It's not a fine piece of cabinetry. So we'll just give it an oil and wax finish. That will help the wood slide and the plane slide, and it will also protect it a bit from moisture. Okay, so I gave it a couple coats of boiled linseed oil. I'm going to put some polish on it. We don't want it too slippery, although it will protect the wood and will help the plane slide. And we want a little bit of grip here, but I think the wax is going to be fine. Okay, so we have finished our shooting board. The railing here, so basically lock it in to the vise, keep it in place. We'll take our 90 degrees, lock it in. Most people use a bench plane. I have a number 4 plane. Rides in here nice. Remembering these are sacrificial. I will rub a bit of oil on there. There, so there's that. If I take a piece of wood and I want to square up the end from, this is dressed all around, although I've cut this end. So I just put it into place. It's doing a good job on the end grain. Basically, I'm just incrementally pushing it forward as I move the plane back and forth. You can see the shavings coming out there. So we'll just take our engineer's square and check that up, and that is perfect, which I've never done before. Not much tear outs, taking only a little bit off. So we can do the same thing, and we can do the same thing with our 45. And our 45 can run either direction. So if you have a piece of molding and you want to go into the joint, definitely do that. Just make sure it's set up here. That's good. I'm going to need something to cut a 45 degree on, so I'm just going to hand cut the angle without measuring. You can train your eye to cut 45. I'm not going to be able to cut it perfect, but we'll definitely clean it up and show you the difference. Okay, so we got our two pieces. If I flip them around, and we'll check for square. The cuts aren't very good. They definitely need to be cleaned up. And the cut is not 90 degrees to each other this way. I may have actually come close. I am pretty close, but you can see by the joint, it's not perfect. It's probably off by 1 or 2 degrees, and that's just by eye. So we can clean that up for both of them and make a perfect 90-degree joint. So same thing, I'm just bringing it until the plane contacts it. Almost there. I'm just incrementally moving it into the plane iron. Okay, so let's put this together. The joint's definitely much cleaner than when we started. Take our engineer's square, and we are perfect. So I would clean this joint up a little bit more to make it as tight fitting as possible. But I did it on the non-square side. So if I had flipped it over, done it on this side, it would be perfect. If I plane this off and did it again, it will definitely be perfect. And that is very good, especially since I didn't even measure. I just cut that by eye.